It made a virtue in the game of being caught out, found an awkward beauty in finding itself on the verge of coming apart, a sustained and concrete play on being taken aback. Lambert bit his lower lip as he danced, a look of resolve, chagrin, and cool assurance all in one. The lids of his eyes lowered the longer he danced, never completely closing, but according with the sense of sleepwalk even so. The floor was flat rather than curved, one saw, but Lambert's walk reminded one this was mere appearance. So fraught was each step he took with the risk not of falling to the floor so much as falling from it. He staked a claim for ultimate stakes, intimating that to lose balance would be to vanish, disappear. Aunt Nancy and Jeanette's failed or failing body came to mind, of course, supported and propped up by the note of ultimacy Lambert struck. Jeanette let this note take the humming, grunting, and moaning she dispersed a step further, finally having recourse to words as though Lambert's walk advanced into an answering talk. She resorted to words in what she now sang, albeit words so often as not entirely clear. If you've heard Cante Hondo, or Nelson Cavaquinho, or that Billie Holiday album, Songs and Conversations, Paramount put out a few years back, you'll have an idea of the way she made the music of slurred speech. She took up with and played with the title of the piece in a now no longer sotto voce run, a run which reminded us we don't yet know what singing is, haven't yet exhausted what it can be. She sang as though she talked out loud in her sleep, a ripped, insistent talk that was garbled and articulate by turns, thick-tongued, inebriate talk in which dream and thief kept coming up. She held forth with a tone of categorical insistence, what sounded like categorical insistence, vehemently declaiming, expostulating, exhorting. But for all her vehemence, one couldn't make out whether dream was what was stolen or itself the thief, her point evidently being that no clear line separated the two, a cloudy line separated the two. The coupling of categorical tone with cloudy assertion was a tour de force, a slurred swerve into phatic, non-predicate iteration. Lambert, meanwhile, continued his backwards walking dance. Jamila, her stomp-inducted strut. Penguin, his dry ripple and pinch. Aunt Nancy, her pluck-accompanied, strung-accompanied, strum-accompanied, thump-accompanied walk. It now fell to me to make a move. I stood put upon by a phrase I heard inside my head. Given all one has to mourn or lament, were the words which said themselves, it seemed, again and again, words which began a sentence I couldn't complete. Possessed of a non-predicate truth, or this sense of a truth which put completion on the tip of one's tongue, only to withhold it, I had no choice but to put a horn in my mouth. All I wanted was to feel the reed vibrate against my lip, the sense of extension, completion even, the horn, a straight one, would give my tongue. I took up my soprano and put it in my mouth, content with merely percussive bleats and blurts to begin with, but surprising myself by falling in with Lambert. It was an impulse I followed without giving any thought, joining the dance he continued to make of courting imbalance, the backwards walking circle he went round and round in. I fell in behind Lambert, that is, facing his back, but in another sense, in front, dancing backwards myself as though I led the way, Pied Piper-like. The soprano was the pipe I enticed him with, charmed him with, his already sleepwalk-seeming tread all the more so now. Percussive bleeps and blurps gave way to a more sinuous vein, a snake charmer's vein. He followed my lead, mesmerized it seemed, although it was I who had followed his, a reversal or a confounding of back and front, which augmented or extended Jeanette's confounding of dream and thief. I walked flat-footed at first, backing round and round as I played, but the more I played, the more I continued to in fact follow Lambert's lead. The more I played, the more I leaned back, finally letting my toes and the balls of my feet leave the floor, dancing on my heels as did Lambert, my arms out in front holding the horn, elbows raised for balance. I, too, leaned at a 75-degree angle. My raised elbows felt like wings. It seemed I'd fly backwards, lift off at exactly that angle at any moment. Though that moment never came, I felt for a sustained, seemingly endless instant how right Aunt Nancy had been. We were each the arm of a universal itch, a shared, angling arm eternally bent on leverage, though Archimedean crowbar, crack in the cosmic egg, call it what you will. Whether it was an in or an out we sought, we could not have said. We did find our way to the bridge in due course. Did get back to the head and wind up the piece. It was evidently one of our best that night. Later, as we left the club, we saw several people who'd been in the audience milling around on the sidewalk outside. One of them spotted us and yelled out, "Yeah, Dream Thief." He then leaned back at a 75-degree angle and proceeded to walk backwards on his heels, arms out in front. Yours, yeah. Let me read you a shorter one and then finish with a bit of more recent poetry. One of the things that happens in Base Cathedral is that the Angel of Dust writes the liner notes for the three-record Orphic Bend. And this letter is written after receipt of the draft of the liner notes. And another thing that's happening in this book is that M, who is mainly a reed player, plays saxophones and such, but also plays trumpet, becomes more and more interested in trumpet, more and more interested in brass after what he calls his brass epiphany. So there's some talk of that in this short letter. Dear Angel of Dust, thank you for the liner notes. Who but you could have written so movingly about Orphic Bend? It seems you've removed at least one wall, perhaps two or three, between reflex and assignation. We ourselves now hear the music in another light. I say so using the expression after a great deal of thought. Isn't it the otherwise not evident pulsation of light, an achievement of tension between tendency and torque you apprise throughout, the bent, burnished body of tone or intimation, torn toward the other meaning of turn, to go sour? Isn't such an aggrieved or aggressive turn, severing wisdom and resignation, Claire's rough acoustic approximation? You lend such light an ear it wouldn't have were it not for you, and we follow suit. Your words become the axe we each unwittingly played, an interpolative wrinkle apportioning lapse and oblique sustentation. It's as though your notes were the music's destiny all along, unbeknown to us. Axial immensities come up largesse. We read our music in what you've written, and the ear you lend it amplifies ours. Who but you could do that? Speaking of liner notes, I just picked up Frank Lowe's Schizoke, which carries a reprint of an interview he did with Cadence on the back. I'm struck, especially in the wake of the brass epiphany I wrote about in my last letter, by him talking about stealing licks from trumpeters to get away from Train's influence. I'm even more struck by how he puts what this led into, the experiment in time and colors he calls just having the horn sound like it's having a big laugh. He mentions Lester Bowie in connection with this, shedding new light, without referring to it outright, on Lester's trademark lab coat, allowing one to see such attire in relation not only to Miles's "we were like scientists of sound" and his diversion from Satchmo, but also to Satchmo's Elizabethan clownish license, as Ralph Ellison puts it. One would want to stop short of calling Mad Scientist or Mad Professor Lester the synthesis of Miles's antithesis and Lewis's thesis. But the near rhyme of Lester's coat with Jester's cap bespeaks a need to keep alive, if not sublate,